The night it all started was supposed to be like any other. I was flipping through emails after a late dinner, savoring the quiet hum of the house. Monica, my wife of 7 years, was out at what she called a book club meeting. The words were harmless enough, but something in her tone had changed lately. Softer, more distant, like she was speaking through a veil. I dismissed it for weeks, chalking it up to work stress. But that night, everything changed. An email caught my eye, its subject line vague yet compelling. Exclusive invitation to La Nuit Masquée. The message invited me to an upscale private club I'd never heard of. It promised an evening of unparalleled elegance and discretion, featuring strict anonymity ensured by elaborate Venetian masks. Normally, I dismiss such things as spam, but then I noticed the sender, Victor. Victor was one of my closest friends, a man I trusted implicitly. We'd worked together for years, building our businesses side by side. His reputation for extravagant hobbies was no secret, but this seemed peculiar. What was Victor doing with a club like this? And why invite me? Curiosity turned to suspicion when I clicked on the link. The club site was sleek and cryptic, requiring an access code to proceed. Just as I was about to close it, I noticed something odd on my screen, a small reflection in the darkened laptop monitor behind me. Monica was standing in the doorway, her face unreadable. "Working late?" she asked, her voice light but cautious. I closed the laptop instinctively. "Just finishing up," I replied, trying to sound casual. "You're home early." She smiled faintly and walked toward me, setting her purse on the table. "The meeting ended early," she said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. But her lips lingered too long, as if testing my reaction. I caught a faint whiff of perfume, something new and far more expensive than what she usually wore. My stomach tightened. After she disappeared upstairs, I reopened my laptop and stared at Victor's invitation. A gnawing unease took root in my chest. Why was I suddenly connecting the dots between Monica's absences, her shift in behavior, and this mysterious club? The only way to know for sure was to accept. I typed back a response. "I'll be there. Send me the details." 3 days later, I stood at the club's entrance, my heart hammering against my ribs. The building was unmarked, save for an ornate black door flanked by 2 stone lions. A uniformed doorman greeted me, his face impassive as he handed over a polished silver mask. It was heavier than I expected, the intricate carvings cold against my palms. "Your discretion is paramount," he said, his voice low. "The rules are simple. Masks stay on at all times. No names, no identities, no exceptions." I nodded, sliding the mask into place and stepping inside. The room was a tableau of decadence. Gilded chandeliers casting golden light over velvet drapes, soft music blending with the murmur of conversations. Everyone wore masks, some sleek and minimalist, others adorned with feathers and jewels. It felt like walking into a surreal painting where no one was truly real. Victor found me quickly, his distinctive laugh unmistakable even behind the elaborate mask he wore. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, guiding me toward the bar. "Davis," he exclaimed, using my middle name as always. "You made it. Welcome to the last honest corner of the world." I played along, keeping my tone light. "What is this place, Victor? Some kind of playground for the bored and wealthy?" He grinned. "Something like that. A sanctuary, really. No judgments, no consequences." His eyes flickered over the crowd. "You'll see." I didn't have to wait long. The first performance began minutes later, a slow, hypnotic dance of masked figures that melted into one another with an intimacy that bordered on voyeuristic. Drinks flowed freely, and the air buzzed with a strange, heady electricity. It was a spectacle unlike anything I'd ever seen, both enthralling and deeply unsettling. As I moved through the room, observing but keeping to myself, I froze mid-step. A woman in a silver mask stood by the grand staircase, her posture achingly familiar. The way she tilted her head, the soft arch of her neck, it was Monica. I was sure of it. She didn't see me, her attention focused on the man beside her, who wore a mask as dark as midnight. They exchanged a few words, and then she followed him up the stairs. My fists clenched, but I forced myself to stay still, blending into the crowd. Charging after her would only expose me and raise questions I wasn't ready to answer. Instead, I stayed rooted to the spot, watching her disappear into the shadows above. My mind raced, equal parts rage and disbelief. Had this been going on all along? How many times had she come here, to this den of secrets and lies? Victor appeared again at my side, handing me a drink. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, his tone light but probing. I swallowed the anger rising in my throat and forced a smirk, just soaking it all in. But as I raised the glass to my lips, my thoughts crystallized into a single, unshakable resolve. I needed to know everything. No matter what it took, I would uncover the truth. And when I did, Monica, and whoever else was involved, would pay. The following days felt like a surreal haze. Each time I replayed that night in my mind, it became harder to dismiss the truth. It was Monica. Her walk, her posture, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. It was unmistakable. But what gutted me the most wasn't just her presence there. It was the ease with which she seemed to navigate the club. This wasn't a one-time experiment. She belonged there. I buried myself in work during the day, trying to stave off the storm brewing inside me. But every quiet moment was a battle against my imagination, conjuring up images of her with faceless men hidden behind masks. Questions plagued me. How long had she been doing this? Did she know any of these men outside the club? Did she even feel guilty? I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Not without evidence. Victor called me a few days later, his voice casual but with that unmistakable edge of curiosity. "So, what did you think of La Nuit Masquée?" "Pretty wild." "Huh. Wild's one word for it," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "How long have you been going there?" "A couple of years," he admitted, a chuckle in his voice. "It's not for everyone, but it grows on you. The anonymity, the freedom. You wouldn't believe the kind of people who show up there." I wanted to ask more, but I knew better than to reveal my cards. Instead, I redirected. "It's an interesting setup. How'd you even hear about it?" "A friend invited me," he said vaguely. "The place is invitation only, but once you're in, you're part of the family." Speaking of which, his voice dipped conspiratorially. "If you ever want to indulge a little more, let me know. I can arrange a private introduction." My grip tightened on the phone. He had no idea how much those words grated against my raw nerves. "Appreciate the offer," I said smoothly. "I'll keep it in mind." The call ended, but the knot in my stomach remained. If Victor had been going there for years, could he be one of the masked men Monica had? The thought was too nauseating to entertain, yet I couldn't ignore it. Victor and I were close, but not that close. He'd never betray me like that, would he? That evening, I sat alone in the dim glow of my study, scrolling through my emails. There it was, a follow-up message from La Nuit Masquée. It was an automated thank you for attending, coupled with an invitation to return. It even included a discreet payment link for a membership. The audacity of it made my blood boil, but then an idea struck me. If this was how they operated, there had to be records, schedules, guest lists. My engineering mind immediately went into problem-solving mode. I had the skills to access what I needed, and for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of control. If I could get into their system, I could trace Monica's activities, her guest history, maybe even match her movements to specific members. I spent the next several hours setting up a plan. Using the club's website as a starting point, I traced its back-end system and discovered it wasn't as impenetrable as they likely believed. It wasn't long before I found an admin portal, hidden behind layers of encryption. Hacking into it would take time, but time was something I had. Over the next week, my nights became a blur of code and caffeine. During the day, I played the part of the attentive husband. Monica seemed oblivious to my suspicions, though I began noticing cracks in her facade. She was more affectionate than usual, cooking elaborate dinners, and even suggesting we take a weekend trip together. "Work's been so hectic," she said one evening, her eyes glistening with what might have been guilt. "I feel like we've been a little distant lately. I want us to reconnect." I forced a smile. "That sounds nice." Inwardly, I seethed. Did she think a romantic getaway would erase whatever she'd done in that club? But I nodded, deciding it was better to let her think she was in control. The more comfortable she felt, the easier it would be to catch her off guard when the time came. 2 nights later, I hit pay dirt. After countless hours of trial and error, I finally breached the club system. What I found sent a cold shiver down my spine. The guest logs were meticulously kept, each entry tied to a unique ID number. Members were identified only by their aliases, no real names. But the descriptions left little to the imagination. I cross-referenced the dates with Monica's so-called book club nights and found a perfect match. She'd attended nearly every event over the past 4 months. But the worst part? Her ID was linked to multiple private sessions with the same alias. Black Diamond? I didn't need a face to know what that meant. She wasn't just attending these gatherings. She had a regular partner. My chest tightened as I scrolled through the logs. Names like Silver Wolf, Crimson Hawk, and Obsidian King stood out, each associated with private rooms. These weren't casual encounters. They were orchestrated, deliberate. Among them, one name repeated with unsettling frequency. Victor. My stomach turned. It couldn't be. Not Victor. Not him. The following night, I returned to the club. The same gilded doors, the same polished mask in my hands. But this time, I wasn't there as an observer. I was hunting for answers. Monica didn't know I joined the membership. She wouldn't expect me. As I stepped into the lavish room, my heart pounded, anger and determination warring within me. I would find her, find Victor, find whoever else had been complicit in this betrayal. And when I did, the game would truly begin. The mask felt heavier this time, like the weight of my betrayal wrapped in polished metal. The grand double doors of La Nuit Masquée loomed before me, their black lacquer reflecting the dim glow of the streetlights. I adjusted my jacket, straightened my tie, and inhaled deeply. My mission was simple: confirm what I already suspected and prepare for the reckoning. The doorman nodded silently, recognizing me from my first visit. As he handed me my mask, he whispered, "Enjoy your evening, sir." His voice was smooth, practiced, a gatekeeper to secrets too dark for daylight. I offered a curt nod and slipped the mask into place, my identity vanishing as I stepped through the gilded threshold. The scene inside was as opulent as I remembered. Golden chandeliers casting flickering light onto polished floors, velvet drapes shrouding corners, and bodies moving like shadows through the dimly lit room. Laughter and whispered conversations floated through the air, mingling with the soft strains of a violin. Each masked figure seemed to glide effortlessly, every gesture purposeful, every glance a calculated mystery. I scanned the room, my heart hammering against my ribs. My mind raced with images of Monica. Her silver mask and familiar posture burned into my memory. If she was here tonight, she wouldn't know I was watching. I planned to use that anonymity to my advantage. The bartender, a man with sharp cheekbones and a perpetual smirk, poured me a whiskey without asking. "First time back?" he inquired, sliding the glass across the counter. "Something like that," I replied, keeping my voice low. "Busy tonight?" He chuckled. "Always. The allure of mystery never fades." I sipped the whiskey, using the moment to observe the room. Couples paired off in darkened corners, their faces close, their whispers blending into the background hum. A trio of masked figures disappeared up the grand staircase, their movements confident and unhurried. Somewhere in this den of shadows, Monica was hiding. Or perhaps she wasn't hiding at all. "Looking for someone?" the bartender pressed, his smirk widening as if he'd caught the scent of intrigue. "Just soaking it in," I lied, setting down my glass. Victor found me near the edge of the room, his laughter cutting through the muted din. His mask, a sleek black piece with sharp edges resembling a raven's beak, was unmistakable. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm. "Davis, back for more so soon?" I forced a laugh. Couldn't resist. "It's something else, isn't it?" "Something else indeed," he said, his tone light. "Glad you're getting the hang of it. First time's always overwhelming. So, tell me, did you try the private rooms last time?" My jaw tightened. He was fishing, testing my reaction. I shook my head, keeping my tone casual. "Not yet. Still getting my bearings." Victor's eyes gleamed behind his mask, his smirk tinged with amusement. You'll get there. Just wait until you meet the right partner. The masks make it liberating. Liberating. The word burned in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. I had to play along if I wanted to dig deeper. As the night wore on, I shadowed Victor discreetly, careful to keep my distance. He mingled effortlessly, exchanging quick words with several masked figures. His laughter echoed through the room like a signal, drawing attention wherever he went. But it wasn't until he disappeared up the grand staircase that my pulse quickened. I waited a moment, then followed, keeping my footsteps light on the plush carpet. The upstairs halls were quieter, the air heavier, as if the very walls held their breath. Dim sconces cast flickering shadows, and I could hear faint murmurs behind closed doors. Victor turned a corner ahead, his tall frame unmistakable even beneath the mask. I quickened my pace, careful not to make a sound. He stopped before a door marked with a simple silver insignia, a crescent moon. After glancing over his shoulder, he slipped inside, the door clicking shut behind him. I crept closer, my heart thundering in my ears. Standing outside the door, I strained to hear anything, voices, movements, clues, but the heavy wood muffled everything. My mind raced with possibilities. Was Monica in there with him? Had they arranged this rendezvous in advance? I didn't have to wait long for an answer. Moments later, the door opened slightly, and a woman stepped out. She wore a silver mask, her flowing gown shimmering in the low light. My breath caught in my throat. Even without seeing her face, I knew it was Monica. She didn't notice me as she adjusted her gown and smoothed her hair, her movements deliberate but unhurried. A second figure appeared in the doorway. Victor. He leaned against the frame, his posture casual, but his tone was intimate as he said, "You're incredible as always. Same time next week?" Monica's laughter was soft, almost shy, as she nodded. "We'll see." As she turned to leave, I ducked into the nearest alcove, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure she'd hear it. She passed me without a second glance, her perfume lingering in the air like a taunt. Victor remained in the doorway for a moment before retreating back inside, the door clicking shut. I leaned against the wall, struggling to steady my breath. The weight of what I just witnessed threatened to crush me, but anger held me upright. It wasn't just her betrayal. It was the casual ease of it, the way she laughed with him, as though I didn't exist. And Victor, my friend, my confidant, he played me for a fool, but no more. I straightened my jacket, my resolve hardening with every passing second. This wasn't just about catching them in the act. It was about exposing the entire charade for what it was. Monica, Victor, and everyone else complicit in this web of lies. The game had only just begun, and I was ready to rewrite the rules. The drive home that night was a blur, my mind a storm of anger, betrayal, and calculation. The revelation was a double-edged blade. My wife was unfaithful, but worse, she was unfaithful with Victor, someone I had trusted like a brother. The more I thought about their laughter, their intimacy, the deeper the knife twisted. Yet amid the chaos in my head, one thought emerged crystal clear. This wasn't the end of me. If anything, it was the beginning of something far greater. By the time I pulled into the driveway, a plan was already forming. Monica's betrayal wasn't just a breach of trust. It was a challenge, and I intended to rise to it. Over the next few days, I resumed my role as the loving husband, masking my inner turmoil with the same precision Monica had mastered. Every kiss good morning, every shared dinner was a performance in a play she didn't know I was directing. She, too, seemed unaware that the web of lies she'd spun was unraveling around her. She smiled more often, even brought home a bottle of wine one evening, declaring it a treat for us. Her attempts at rekindling the spark in our marriage were almost laughable now. If she was trying to assuage her guilt, she was doing a poor job of it. "I was thinking," she said one night as we sat on the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, "maybe we should take that trip to Paris we always talked about. Just the two of us. Wouldn't that be romantic?" I sipped my whiskey, watching her over the rim of the glass. She looked so earnest, so convincingly innocent. "Paris sounds amazing," I said with a small smile. "Let's talk about it soon." She beamed, leaning over to kiss me. You're the best. If only she knew what I had planned. Victor, on the other hand, was harder to stomach. He called me twice in the days following our encounter at La Nute Masquée, his tone as friendly as ever. Each conversation was a test of my restraint. Davis, my man, you've been quiet lately. Everything okay? He asked during one call. Yeah, just work keeping me busy, I replied, my voice steady. You know how it is. Tell me about it, he said, chuckling. We need to grab drinks soon. Been too long since we caught up. Definitely, I lied. Let's plan something next week. It took every ounce of self-control not to call him out, not to let my rage spill over. But patience was key. If I wanted to dismantle his life the way he was dismantling mine, I had to play the long game. My nights were consumed with preparation. The access I'd gained to La Nute Masquée's records was a goldmine. I spent hours poring over guest lists, timestamps, and transactions, mapping out connections between members. It didn't take long to confirm my suspicions. Monica and Victor weren't the only ones involved in this sordid network. Two other names stood out, aliases linked to recurring private sessions with Monica. One of them was Crimson Hawk, a figure who attended nearly every gathering she did. The other was Silver Wolf, a less frequent but still notable presence. I dug deeper, cross-referencing aliases with real-world clues. Each transaction held a breadcrumb, an email domain, a payment method, a booking location. Slowly but surely, the faceless members of the club began to take shape. Crimson Hawk, I discovered, was a local businessman I'd met at one of Victor's poker nights. Silver Wolf turned out to be a consultant Monica's firm occasionally hired. Both men were married, their wives blissfully unaware of their extracurricular activities. I compiled everything, photos, timestamps, and payment logs, into a dossier that grew thicker by the day. The more I uncovered, the clearer my path became. This wasn't just about Monica and Victor anymore. It was about the entire illusion they'd created, the house of cards I was about to collapse. The opportunity to set my plan in motion came sooner than I expected. Victor called me one Friday afternoon with an invitation. Davis, my guy, I'm hosting a little poker night tomorrow at my place. Just a few of the usual suspects. You in? Sounds great, I said, masking my disdain with feigned enthusiasm. What time? 8 sharp. Don't forget your wallet, he joked. As I hung up, I felt a spark of satisfaction. Victor's arrogance was going to be his undoing. I spent the rest of the day preparing, meticulously planning how I'd deliver the first blow. Saturday night arrived, and I found myself standing outside Victor's sprawling home, a nondescript briefcase in hand. The other guests had already arrived, their cars lining the driveway. I rang the doorbell and Victor answered, his grin as wide as ever. Davis, glad you made it. Wouldn't miss it, I said, stepping inside. The poker table was set up in his den, a lavish room with floor-to-ceiling windows and leather chairs. The other players greeted me warmly, their masks of civility as polished as Victor's. Among them were Crimson Hawk and Silver Wolf, their real identities now burned into my memory. They had no idea what was coming. The game began, casual banter flowing freely as chips exchanged hands. I played along, laughing at their jokes and throwing in the occasional bluff. But beneath the surface, my mind was fixed on the briefcase by my feet, the one containing a USB drive loaded with everything I'd uncovered. As the night wore on, I let the conversation drift, steering it subtly toward La Nute Masquée. It didn't take much. Victor, ever the showman, couldn't resist bragging about his exclusive connections. It's all about who you know, he said with a wink, taking a sip of his scotch. Isn't it always? I replied, my smile cold. Speaking of which, I've been working on something interesting lately. Something I think you'll all find illuminating. Their curiosity piqued. I reached for the briefcase, my pulse steady. It was time to pull the first thread and watch their perfect little world unravel. Victor's smirk faltered as I snapped open the latches on the briefcase. The other men around the table exchanged glances, their curiosity laced with unease. I could feel the tension in the room shift as I pulled out a sleek laptop and a small projector. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression calm, even friendly. Gentlemen, I said, plugging the projector into the laptop. Let's take a little break from the cards. I have something fascinating to show you. Victor chuckled nervously, raising his glass. What's this, Davis? Some kind of PowerPoint on how to lose at poker. The others laughed, but it was forced, their discomfort palpable. I ignored the jab, my fingers steady as I navigated the folders on my screen. The room darkened as the projector cast a bright glow on the far wall. The first image appeared. A masked woman descending the grand staircase of La Nute Masquée, her silver mask catching the light. Monica. Her posture was unmistakable, her dress elegant yet unmistakably provocative. I heard the sharp intake of breath from across the table, followed by a low murmur. Victor's glass paused halfway to his lips, his hand visibly tightening around it. "What the hell is this?" he asked, his voice sharp. I turned to face him, my mask of civility slipping. "This, Victor, is what you call the truth. Something you and the others in this room have been avoiding for far too long." The next slide displayed a series of logs, timestamps of entries and exits from the club, with aliases neatly listed alongside. Black Diamond, Crimson Hawk, Silver Wolf. Their eyes darted between the screen and each other, panic creeping into their features. "Wait a minute," one of the men stammered. It was Jason, better known now as Crimson Hawk. His face turned a sickly shade of pale. "What is this? How do you—" "I told you, Jason," I interrupted, my voice calm yet ice-cold. "I've been working on something. What you're looking at are records from La Nute Masquée, guest lists, private room reservations, payment logs. It's all here." Victor's chair scraped against the floor as he stood abruptly. "You hacked the system?" he barked, his bravado crumbling. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Oh, I know exactly what I've done," I shot back, rising to meet him. "You think your little masquerade made you untouchable? That your secrets were safe behind masks and dim lights? Think again." The next image hit harder than I'd expected. It was a candid shot of Monica and Victor in one of the club's private rooms. She sat on his lap, their masks slightly askew, her head tilted back in laughter. Victor's hand rested possessively on her thigh. A sharp gasp came from another corner of the room. One of the men stood, his chair tipping over as he glared at Victor. "You son of a bitch," he spat. "You said you weren't messing with anyone's wife." Victor's face twisted in rage. "Shut up, Dan," he snapped, his carefully curated composure unraveling. "This isn't the time. This isn't the time?" I interrupted, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Oh, I think it's the perfect time, Victor. See, this isn't just about you and Monica. This is about all of you. Your lies. Your betrayals. Every single dirty secret you've tried to bury." I clicked to the next slide, a video file. The room fell silent as the clip began to play. It was security footage from the club, captured in vivid detail. Monica and Victor again, this time joined by Silver Wolf. The three of them moved in a synchronized dance of intimacy, their masks doing little to hide their identities from my trained eye. Jason swore under his breath, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "This is insane," he muttered. Can't just what?" I snapped, turning to face him. "Expose the truth? Hold you accountable? Because that's exactly what I'm doing, Jason. Every second of this has been carefully documented. And don't think for a moment that it ends here." Victor lunged toward me, his face contorted with fury. "You've lost your damn mind," he shouted, reaching for the laptop. But I was ready. I sidestepped him, grabbing the briefcase and locking it shut in one swift motion. "Sit down, Victor," I growled, my voice low and dangerous. "You don't get to play the victim now." He froze, the fire in his eyes dimming as he realized how little control he had left. "What do you want, Davis?" he asked, his tone desperate. "You think this is going to fix anything? You're just blowing up your own life." I stepped closer, leaning in until my face was mere inches from his. "Fix anything?" I echoed. "No, Victor. This isn't about fixing. This is about destruction. Yours. Monica's. Everyone who thought they could hide behind masks and lies." The room was suffocating with tension, the air thick with fear and anger. For a moment, no one moved, the weight of what I'd unleashed settling heavily on their shoulders. I let the silence linger, savoring their discomfort. Finally, I broke it. "Here's how this works," I said, my voice steady. "You're all going to sit tight while I send this dossier to your wives, your employers, your business partners, anyone who deserves to know who you really are." Victor's face drained of color. "You wouldn't I?" I shot back, my lips curling into a bitter smile. "You underestimated me, Victor. All of you did. And now you're going to pay the price." As I packed up my things and walked toward the door, the sound of their protests and pleas followed me. But I didn't look back. I'd done what I came to do. The game was over, and I was the one holding all the cards. The aftermath of that night at Victor's house unfolded with all the chaos and destruction I had envisioned. My phone buzzed relentlessly the next morning, the screen lighting up with messages from Victor, Jason, and even Monica. Their frantic words painted a vivid picture of lives on the verge of implosion. "Victor, we need to talk. Immediately." "Jason, what the hell, man? Are you seriously going through with this?" "Monica, please come home. We can fix this." "I'm so sorry." "Fix this? Sorry?" Their desperation was laughable. For months, they had operated in shadows, hiding behind masks, weaving their lies into the fabric of my life. And now, when the mask had been ripped away, they dared to beg for mercy? No, mercy was not on the menu. I sat at my desk, sipping coffee as I reviewed the email drafts I'd prepared the night before. Attached to each was a carefully curated dossier of evidence: photographs, timestamps, transaction records, and videos. Every damning detail was cataloged and organized, ready to be sent to the key players in each of their lives. Victor's wife would receive the first blow. I had met her at countless dinners and parties, always the gracious hostess, always doting on Victor as if he were the perfect husband. She deserved to know the truth about the man she shared her life with. The same went for Jason's wife, a woman I had barely known but whose betrayal I could no longer ignore. And Monica, my wife, my partner of 7 years. Her carefully constructed world was about to crumble, and she didn't even realize it yet. By noon, the emails had been sent. The silence that followed was deafening, a stillness that seemed to stretch for hours. I imagined the reactions on the other end: gasps, tears, anger, denial. These weren't just affairs. They were deliberate acts of deception carried out with arrogance and impunity. My phone buzzed again, this time with a call. It was Victor. I let it ring. A moment later, another call came through. This one was from Monica. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "Davis?" Her voice was trembling, the usual confidence stripped away. I need to talk to you. Please. I know I messed up, but we can work through this." "Work through this?" I repeated, my tone icy. "You're delusional if you think there's anything left to work through, Monica." Her breath hitched, but she pressed on. "I was stupid, okay? I got caught up in something I didn't understand. But I love you. I love us. Don't throw that away." I laughed bitterly. "You threw it away. You didn't think about us when you were with Victor, or Jason, or whoever else you've been sneaking off with." "Victor doesn't mean anything to me," she blurted out. "None of them do. It was just an escape." The word stung, but I refused to let it show. "An escape," I echoed. "From what? A life where you had a husband who adored you? A home? Stability? Tell me, Monica, what exactly were you escaping from?" Her silence was answer enough. That evening, I received the first ripple of fallout. Victor's wife, Helena, called me. Her voice was heavy with emotion, each word laced with disbelief. "Davis," she began, struggling to find the right words. "Is it true? Everything you sent me. Is it true?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Every word, every image." She inhaled sharply, and I could hear the faint sound of tears on the other end. "How long?" "Months. Maybe longer," I replied. "I'm sorry, Helena. You didn't deserve this." Neither of us said much after that. What was there to say? I had handed her the truth, and now she had to decide what to do with it. As the days passed, the web of betrayal continued to unravel. Victor's reputation was in free fall. His wife moved out the day after receiving my email, taking their 2 children with her. Words spread quickly through his professional circles, whispers of indiscretions turning into full-blown scandal. Jason, meanwhile, was facing a similar reckoning. His wife had confronted him in front of their children, and the fallout was brutal. He called me once, his voice filled with venom. "You ruined my life," he spat. "No, Jason," I corrected, my tone cold. "You ruined your own life. I just made sure everyone could see it." And then there was Monica. She had moved into a hotel, her attempts to reconcile growing increasingly desperate. Flowers, letters, and tearful voicemails flooded my days, each one a reminder of how far she had fallen. One night, she showed up at the house unannounced. I found her sitting on the front steps, her makeup smeared, her eyes red from crying. "Please," she whispered as I approached. "I just want to talk." I didn't invite her inside. "There's nothing left to say, Monica. I love you," she pleaded. "I made a mistake, but I love you. Can't we just—" "No," I said firmly. "You don't love me. You love the version of me that didn't know the truth. And that version of me is gone." Her sobs echoed in the night as I turned and walked inside, locking the door behind me. By the end of the week, I felt a strange sense of peace. The destruction I had wrought wasn't clean or easy, but it was necessary. The people who had betrayed me, who had taken my trust and twisted it, were now reaping what they had sown. As I sat in the quiet of my home, the phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Monica or Victor. It was Helena. "Davis," she said, her voice steadier than before. "Thank you." "For what?" I asked. "For showing me the truth," she said. "It hurts, but I needed to know." We spoke for a while, her pain mirroring mine in a way that was oddly comforting. When the call ended, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming control over my life, my future, and my sense of self. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. The final piece of my plan unfolded exactly as I'd envisioned it. By now, the chaos I'd set in motion had consumed the lives of everyone involved, and the silence that followed was deafening. No more desperate calls from Victor. No more tearful voicemails from Monica. The world I had known, built on trust, love, and camaraderie, was gone. But so was the illusion that had hidden its ugly truths. The day of reckoning arrived on a crisp, clear morning. I had arranged a meeting at a neutral venue, a private conference room in a boutique hotel downtown. Monica, Victor, and Jason had all agreed to come, each with their own motivations: desperation, guilt, or a futile hope of salvaging their reputations. Helena had also confirmed her attendance, though she was hesitant at first. I promised her this would be the final step toward closure. I arrived early, setting up the room to ensure everything was ready. A large screen dominated the space, hooked up to my laptop. A stack of folders sat neatly on the table, each containing hard copies of the evidence I had meticulously compiled. Today, there would be no masks, no shadows to hide behind. Today, the truth would stand exposed. They arrived one by one. Monica entered first, her face pale, her steps hesitant. She looked at me with a mixture of hope and dread, as if searching for a glimmer of forgiveness. Victor followed, his usual bravado reduced to a strained attempt at composure. Jason came last, his expression one of weary resignation. Helena walked in moments later, her presence commanding despite the pain etched on her face. She didn't acknowledge Victor, her eyes focused solely on me. I gave her a nod, silently thanking her for her courage. "Let's begin," I said, my voice firm but calm. The screen came to life, displaying the now familiar images from La Nuit Masquée. Timestamps, private room logs, and damning photos of Monica and the others. Gasps filled the room as the reality of their actions played out in stark, undeniable clarity. "This," I began, gesturing to the screen, "is what you all thought you could hide. But secrets like these don't stay buried forever." Victor was the first to crack. "Davis, listen," he began, his voice pleading. "We can fix this. Whatever you want, we'll make it right. Just fix this." I interrupted, my tone sharp. "You don't fix betrayal, Victor. You don't undo months of lies and manipulation. You don't make right what you've done. Monica's voice broke the tension. Davis, please. I was wrong. I was selfish. But I love you. Don't let this destroy everything we've built. I turned to her, my expression cold. You destroyed it, Monica. The moment you chose to betray me, you ended us. You don't get to rewrite the story now. The room was heavy with silence as I distributed the folders, each one labeled with the recipient's name. Inside were copies of the evidence, along with letters I had written to each of them. I had stayed up for nights composing those letters, pouring out every ounce of my anger, heartbreak, and finality. Helena opened hers first, her eyes scanning the pages with quiet determination. She didn't cry, didn't react outwardly. Instead, she closed the folder, nodded, and met my gaze. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. Victor looked down at his folder, but didn't open it. He knew what lay inside, and for once, he had no words. Jason, too, sat in stunned silence, the weight of his own actions sinking in. Monica, however, refused to touch hers. This can't be it, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. You're just going to walk away? Throw it all away? I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. You threw it away, Monica. I'm just picking up the pieces. The meeting ended without fanfare. Helena left first, her back straight, her step steady. Victor and Jason followed, their silence a testament to their defeat. Monica lingered, as if hoping for some last-minute reprieve. But I gave her none. When she finally walked out the door, I felt the weight of her absence lift from my shoulders. I stayed in the room a while longer, staring at the now empty screen. The rage that had fueled me for so long was gone, replaced by something calmer, something closer to peace. This wasn't victory, not in the traditional sense, but it was justice, and that was enough. In the weeks that followed, I began to rebuild. Helena and I stayed in touch, bonded by shared pain and resilience. She filed for divorce, as did I. The legal proceedings were swift, aided by the mountain of evidence I had collected. Monica didn't contest. What could she possibly say to defend herself? Victor's professional reputation crumbled, his business partners distancing themselves from the scandal. Jason fared no better, his family life shattered beyond repair. As for La Newt Masquis, I sent an anonymous tip to the authorities, along with the data I had obtained. The club was shut down within days. Months later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, looking out at the city skyline. The air felt different, lighter somehow. I had lost much, but I had also gained something invaluable: clarity. For the first time in a long time, I was free. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all.